All right, so we're diving into aquaculture environmental analysis. I gotta say, when you sent this request in, I was like, niche.
hmm
But, digging into these RoleCatcher excerpts you sent, color me intrigued. What got you interested in the environmental impact of, well, to put it simply, fish farming?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating area, and it's becoming more and more important, with everything going on. Aquaculture, basically just farming things in water and
Yeah.
everything from salmon to seaweed. It's becoming crucial for global food security. But of course, we have to do it sustainably, right?
Yeah.
That's where an aquaculture environmental analyst comes in.
So they're like the protectors of our underwater ecosystems. They make sure that all this farming isn't harming the, well, the delicate ecosystems.
Exactly. Think investigating pollution, monitoring water quality, constantly making sure those ecosystems are healthy. But, and this is important, they're not just advocating for the environment, they're also the ones coming up with sustainable management plans to make sure these aquaculture operations are successful businesses.
So it's like what, a balancing act? You have to balance the needs of the environment with the reality of, businesses needing to make money. And this isn't just like lab coats and microscopes, from what I'm gathering. It sounds like it's problem solving, field work, working with governments, local communities.
Absolutely. And even that's not all of it. They're using all this incredible technology like GIS to map sensitive habitats
Oh,
and data analytics to keep track of fish populations and water conditions. It's really quite impressive.
okay, now hold on. For those of us who don't speak tech, what exactly is GIS?
Oh, right. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. Think like Google Maps, but way more powerful. It lets these analysts layer tons of data onto a map. I'm talking migration patterns, sources of pollution, even what underwater plants are. This lets them really see the big picture and make smart decisions about where aquaculture can be done sustainably.
That's wild. It's this really cool blend of environmental science, actually getting your hands dirty in the field, and high-tech analysis. Who knew that analyzing fish farms could be so, dare I say, cool?
You got it. And we're just getting started.
Yeah, and it goes way beyond just cool. This work has a real sense of purpose. The role catcher stuff, it actually highlighted some of the really rewarding parts of this job, like working with all kinds of aquatic species.
Oh, yeah. They mentioned studying like different fish, shellfish, even seaweed. It's not just salmon farms, is it?
Nope, not at all. And that's
Right.
part of what makes it so interesting. One day you could be out on a boat taking water samples around a mussel farm, and the next you're analyzing data about how fast seaweed is growing to make biofuel. There's just so much variety.
And with all that variety, there's got to be potential for some seriously cool research, right?
Yeah.
Like real innovation. RoleCatcher even mentioned, like developing even more sustainable farming practices. Well, absolutely. This whole field is all about coming up with creative solutions to really complex problems. For example, there are analysts looking at this thing called, get this, integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. Basically, you grow different species together, but in a way that's like mimics natural ecosystems.
Pretty wild, huh? You could be like leading the charge in developing these new systems,
Yeah.
seriously making a difference in how we get food from the ocean.
That's amazing. But okay, let's be real for a second. It can't all be, sunshine and groundbreaking discoveries. RoleCatcher did mention some pretty tough working conditions too.
True. It's not always like glamorous. You're often dealing with whatever Mother Nature throws at you, right? Could be scorching sun, pouring rain, rough seas, you name it. It can be physically demanding too. You got to be okay with things like collecting water samples from a boat or maybe doing inspections in pretty remote areas.
And then there's the pressure of the job itself. We've talked about balancing the ecosystem with, well, the aquaculture operations actually being successful. That's a huge responsibility. It is. The choices these analysts make, they have a ripple effect. It doesn't just impact the environment, but also the people who depend on aquaculture to, make a living. Takes a certain kind of person to handle that kind of pressure. Someone who's passionate, but also, realistic.
So knowing all of this, the research, the field work, the fact that it's demanding, the weight of these decisions, what stands out to you as the biggest pro and con?
That's a tough one. For me, I'd say the biggest pro is definitely the direct impact. You're not just like stuck in an office somewhere. You actually see how your work is protecting the ocean and making aquaculture sustainable. Biggest con, I think I'd have to say the constant learning curve. Things are changing so fast, you always have to be on top of the latest research, technology, and even regulations.
Sounds like it's not a job for someone who's afraid of a challenge.
Definitely not. But for the right person, it's an incredibly rewarding career.
Now, for anyone listening who's thinking, this is me, this is what I want to do, RoleCatcher lays out a pretty clear path, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, they do a good job of that. It usually starts with technician roles, which is where you get that hands-on experience.
So that's like what? Collecting samples and monitoring the water quality, that sort of thing?
You got it. It's all about getting your hands dirty, learning the ropes, really mastering those technical skills. And then from there, you can move up to an analyst position, which is more about analyzing data, figuring out what it all means, and helping to create those management plans.
And then you can become coordinator or manager.
Hmm.
Sounds like there's a whole ladder to climb. But education seems pretty important too, right? Like RoleCatcher went into a lot of detail in that example profile for an aquaculture environmental analyst. They even gave the example analyst a master's and specific certifications.
It just goes to show how specialized this field is becoming.
Speaking of specializations, they mentioned the aquaculture certificate and the water quality analyst certification. Are those pretty common in this line of work?
Definitely becoming more and more important. They show, a real commitment to professional development. And that helps aspiring analysts, stand out.
So it's not just what you know, it's if you can prove it.
Exactly. And in such a fast-paced field, you got to keep learning.
Okay, so let's say you've got the skills, the experience, maybe even a master's degree. Now what? How do you actually land the job? Luckily, RoleCatcher had a whole section on interview prep.
And those sample interview questions,
Yeah.
those are tough. They really make you think about all the challenges this industry is facing.
Yeah, like the one about balancing the needs of a fish farm with the impact on the local ecosystem. There's no easy answer to that.
Exactly. It's about showing that you can really think critically about these ethical dilemmas,
No.
and that you can come up with solutions that actually work. They want to see that you can think on your feet, that you can communicate your ideas clearly, and that you're a team player.
Makes sense. You're not just like analyzing numbers. This is about real people, real businesses, and the future of our oceans, right?
Right, and that's why it's not all about technical skills. Being a good communicator, being able to really connect with all kinds of people, scientists, policymakers, local communities, that's huge.
There's that human element again. Speaking of connecting, RoleCatcher gave us a ton of resources, links to career guides, professional organizations, industry journals. It's like they want you to get hired.
They do, and those resources are so helpful, especially for networking. Like they mentioned the World Aquaculture Society. That's a great one. If you're interested in this field, definitely check it out.
So it's not just what you know, it's who you know, right?
Well, I'd say it's more about who you can learn from. Networking is how you find mentors, people to collaborate with, and of course, job opportunities. Plus, it keeps you up to date on everything that's going on. This field's constantly changing, so you got to stay connected.
Always stay ahead of the curve. So we've gone from exploring the world of aquaculture environmental analysis to understanding what it takes to actually thrive in this career. It's demanding, sure, but also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, and let's not forget the passion. It takes real dedication to tackle these complex issues facing our oceans and make sure that aquaculture is sustainable.
Absolutely. But hey, before we go, I have one last thought for you. We talked about GIS and data analytics, right? But what about all the really futuristic technology that's out there now, like artificial intelligence and machine learning? Imagine the possibilities. Could AI help us predict how things will impact the environment even more accurately than we can now? Could it help us create better systems for feeding fish so there's less waste? Think about how these tools could make aquaculture even more sustainable. It's something to consider as you explore this exciting and constantly evolving field.